This isn't normally the type of video I make, but thanks to several events that transpired, I've come to the realization that I need to say something about this. For context, this is essentially a follow-up to my video about Sigma Scott 4. If you're 18 or older would like further details, go ahead and watch it. But the long and short of it is that he groomed me and an anonymous individual when we were both minors, mainly by inserting sexual stuff into RPs in a server I ran. I confronted him with David and Light, and he ran off 3 days later without giving us his DMs with said anonymous individual. There was a good amount of stuff that happened after the fact, but we'll get to that later. Over a month later, on September 14th, 2024, Hiten Mitsuru would announce her departure from the slideshow commentary community in a video appropriately titled, Goodbye SEC. In that video, she brings up my situation and how it was handled as part of her grievances with the community, and that's what I'll be covering. Without further ado, let's get into this.
2. PokeSonic's groomer, Sigma Scott, has a new Snapchat account. PokeSonic was informed, not by Ephraim, but once again by Light, who had to break the rules of the chat. So she was not told that her groomer was active again. 3rd, and finally, this room, where all of these backroom dealings, dealing with predators and abusive people in the community, that room, nobody knew that it existed. It was not public knowledge until after I left Courthouse. This information was so closely guarded that the people in the server that the chat was housed in did not know it existed, namely, the server built to discuss dangers and conflict within the community. This is absolutely ridiculous, wildly inept behavior, and I cannot fucking believe the audacity to keep important information from victims and to keep the community in the dark about people that are active threats to its members.
Alright, allow me to break this entire thing down, piece by piece. 1, let me get this in particular out of the way, considering it's the elephant in the room. Hiten did not come to me about this. She went to Light, who as mentioned earlier was involved with the Scott call, but not one of the literal victims of the situation. Really interesting maneuver there. Not bothering to get my side of the story at all, instead going to other parties. Definitely doesn't come off as you only using this as an excuse to bash Ephraim rather than caring about the victims in their situation. Oops, did I say that last part out loud? My apologies. 2, when you ask Light if him telling me about Scott's Snapchat was against the rules, he gives you an uncertain, I think so? If he wasn't certain if it was against the rules or not, then that probably means you should have asked him to make absolutely sure if it was or wasn't, rather than run with this narrative you're desperately trying to spin about information being withheld from me. Speaking of information, 3, was I told of this or not? You begin this by saying that PokeSonic was informed, but then switches saying she was not told. Am I just Schrodinger's Poke to you? In all seriousness, what are you even getting at here? Your screenshot shows outright that I was told by Light about the Snapchat, so that latter part just isn't true, and if this is specifically about Ephraim not telling me, well, you should have made that clearer on your part. 4, what if Ephraim simply didn't know about the Snapchat account? Yes, this is purely hypothetical, but situations like this are not always as they seem. Hiten doesn't even have any real evidence that Ephraim knew anyways, which would have been really easy to do if she just talked to him directly. Again, really interesting maneuver to talk to somebody who wasn't even certain about what constituted as rule breaking, instead of talking to the self-appointed leader of Courthouse. That's not true, by the way. He was given Courthouse by its previous owner, who would most likely understand the rules the best, considering he made them. Finally, about that whole backroom dealings thing, you do understand that situations involving accusations of grooming and predation have to be handled with an air of caution and precision, right? Part of that involves making sure you have all the necessary information to make a proper case, and if there is enough to go public, you still need to make sure the victims are okay with certain things being public, or if you need to censor certain parts out of respect for their wishes. I can definitely confirm the latter from experience, considering the other victim of Scott's grooming wished to remain anonymous, and I respected that wish when I made my video. I can also confirm this with your video, considering your royal screw-up and even covering my situation. Part of which being the fact I wasn't asked if I wanted someone to talk about further details in regards to the Scott situation. Also, if nobody knew about the archive room, why was I allowed in there a few times to talk about Scott-related things? Just some food for thought.
Ephraim also said that he would make a video to inform people about Scott, much like the video he just made to inform people about Dollsmick. It's been 3 weeks. Ephraim has put out 5 other videos since then, one of them a 50-minute long video on Razor Fist. Good to see where your priorities lie.
Alright, ex-slideshow commentator, what is your evidence that Ephraim was going to make his own video about Scott? Oh, right. There isn't any. Because why would I expect evidence for a straight-up lie? While yes, the video would have been in relation to the Scott stuff, it would have been on a fan-made Mega Man RPG site that Scott was on, and how the moderators didn't want to remove him from there. He also never promised this video. It was just an idea he had that never came to fruition. Do you even have a source, or did you simply make up this claim like it's a concept for an original character? Look, Ephraim's handling of Courthouse wasn't perfect. I get that. However, if I had to compare simply not handling a server the best, versus using a grooming situation you hadn't gotten any permission to talk about as an excuse to get upon your high horse and act like some sort of martyr on, in spite of the fact that contrary to your claims of being the SEC's babysitter, you almost never got involved with the various situations in the SEC, I'd consider the former the much lesser of the two evils. And considering you have the comment section disabled while the video is still up, I doubt that accountability or even just telling any sort of truth was a high priority of yours when making this video. With all of that being said, this has been the Vampire Kami, signing out.